Warm welcome, please. Michael Owen, everyone! You are very welcome to Dublin.
Thank you very much. Great to be here.
Yeah, no, we appreciate it. We appreciate it. So look, we're going to have a few laughs and talk about fun stuff as well, but there's no point trying to ignore the fact that we all have tough times in our lives. So, for instance, there would have been a time in your life when you would have heard, "Dad, I'm going on Love Island."
I thought that was coming.
We're sorry to do this to you, Michael.
I didn't know what you were talking about at the start, and as soon as I thought, this is coming, yeah.
But Gemma was amazing on Love Island. I watched the whole thing, I'm not afraid to say. And she came across so well, and she was the youngest contestant. I thought she was so beyond her years, and how she came across.
Yeah, thanks. It wasn't the best of conversations when she first asked me, I must admit. But on a serious note, I had no worries about her. She's pretty sensible, and she's a good kid, and I had no worries. I didn't bring myself to watching some of the challenges and things like that. I don't like seeing my daughter kissing other people. But in general, I probably watched 30-40% of the show. And on the days that I didn't watch, I was on the phone to the wife at 10:05 saying, how did she do? And no, it's been great feedback, and she's done well. And she was 50-50 whether to go on it in the first place. Right. But I think it's been good for her, and you know, she's had a good time.
I suppose the scary thing from your point of view is not so much how she'll do, it's how will this be edited, how will it be received, and you would have a deep understanding of fame at a young age, and it's not an easy thing.
No, it's not. I suppose that the one thing that I was concerned about, I had no worries about her. I was concerned about the stigma, maybe people saying, "Oh, your daughter going on that," and because I've not watched it personally in the past, but I've heard about it, and we all know. We all know what people are perceived by going on it, and that was my main worry. I'm going to be an avid watcher from now on, I can tell you now, I've seen it.
There is that fear, I suppose, fame at a young age, what way it'll go. For you at 17, you signed your first professional contract with Liverpool?
Yeah, and actually in the days after, it's actually reminded me, because, don't get me wrong, I still semi in the public eye doing the TV and things like that, but it has reminded me a lot. When you read there's virtually an article about her every day in some showbiz magazine or newspaper. And the inaccuracies of it all is unbelievable. It just reminded me of when I was 17, when I was 18, and it felt like there was an article about you every day, and it was like, that's so wrong, it's so inaccurate. It's amazing what people do, because if they can't get the news themselves, then of course they will make a lot of it up. So, but it has, it's made me realise what it was like, but she's handling it fine, and but she's really a home girl. She loves being at home, and since she's been away, she's come back, and she's had to be in London for a few days doing different bits and bobs as part of the ITV contract, but she can't wait to get back home and start riding a horse again.
Yeah. She said that the whole way through.
Yeah, and she's got dogs and horses and everything else that she's just missed like mad. So she can't wait to just get back to a bit of normality now.
And I presume fun to see the blank faces when your name was mentioned, the new generation who were like, who?
Well, this is the thing now. I'm walking down the street and people are going, that's Gemma Owen's dad. I'm like, you what? I've got ammunition here if anyone wants to say it.
1998, it's amazing. I mean, talk about fame. Boom, it was absolutely extraordinary. You were on the show a couple of years ago and we were chatting in studio, and something you said always stuck with me. You arrived home and you remembered even, like, I think it was your brother or somebody, you almost caught him, like, just looking at you, like, reassessing, oh my God, I live with a superstar now, and both wonderful and slightly alienating.
Yeah, and you know what, I wanted to push this Love Island stuff, but I'll go back to it just for one more. I was conscious of that when I was watching it, because, of course, I've got 3 other children, and their sister was on the telly, and everybody in school talking about their sister and things like that, and I was conscious of what happened to me, and I was sort of making sure they realised that it's just Gemma, it's just our, my daughter, their sister, and she's just a normal person. And of course, when she gets out, you're going to be walking down the street with her, and people are going to be asking for photos and different bits and bobs. But I was conscious of that everybody in the house, when she comes back, she's just what she was. She's no different. Because, when I came back in '98, I didn't feel different as a person myself. I still desperately wanted to come home. I wanted to go training again and play for my club again and see my mum and dad and friends. It's the way people are with you, not the way you are with people. People see you in a different way because of fame. So I was very conscious of that.
And is that a difficult thing, an alienating thing, or was it fine? It was your life and that's it?
Well, it changes your life. It certainly changed my life coming back as an 18-year-old. The attention, the intrusion. I think back then as well, I mean, we live in a society now whereby people can argue all they like about, where's the most pressurized and things like that, because now, of course, you've got social media. But you have far less publications now than when I was 18 coming back. So there was dozens, and it felt like dozens of papers all trying to fight for that different story, and there was press that would, delve into personal life and things like that. Whereas nowadays, newspapers on the decline. I think it's much more social media driven. So it's a different thing, but we had to in those days deal with press more so than now. It's about they can build their own image. Whatever they can type something, and within 5 seconds they can create whatever they want to create, people of today, whereas we were dictated to. And of course, I came back from the '98 World Cup, and there was a story. Everybody wanted to create one devil and one angel. Of course, one man, David Beckham, got sent off, and I was an 18-year-old fresh-faced kid that just scored a goal. So there was this fella's whiter than white, and that stuck throughout my career, which helped sometimes, but hindered sometimes as well. But that was it. I had no control, or we had no control of how people were going to perceive me then. It was just what happened in the game. Almost that stuck throughout my career then.
And was that difficult at times, the fame side of things?
You use it to your advantage sometimes, don't you? I mean, I rarely got sent off, so people probably thought I was a bit whiter than white. But I don't know. I think later on in life, I mean, I used to room with Jamie Carragher, and he used to just shake his head all the time because we were like the jokers of the dressing room. We got up to loads of pranks, and he used to always look at me and said, Jesus, if people knew what you were like really, they would be astonished, because obviously that was the persona that the press gave me at the time. And don't get me wrong, I wasn't staggering out of pubs and things like that when I was 18, but I was going to give it a different colour then. I wasn't whiter than white, though.
Yeah. At your peak, I don't know, it'd be interesting what you class your peak as, but it was electric. You must have felt, I can burn every defender around me, and, invincible almost. Because Jamie Carragher was just talking about you the other night. Did you see it?
I saw it, yeah.
Yeah.
I was cringing.
He was saying...
But he's right.
you were basically the most confident man alive, was his sense,
Yeah, I suppose. Well, I was, yeah. I suppose I was one of the most confident. I mean, that's what got me to where I got to. I think mental strength is everything. We all get given what we get given. I was small and slight but quick. There's all different shapes and sizes, but at the end of the day, it's what's between your ears. I mean, people have been very, very average players, and I've seen them, and they've got to dizzy heights in their career just through pure mental strength and grit. And I genuinely, at that age, I won't say the words, but I genuinely thought I was that. When I was 15, I didn't think there was a player on the planet that was as good as me as a 15-year-old. And we played international football. We beat them all. I scored against them all. Brazil at Wembley, and all these teams, and broke every record at every international level, and every club, all the club levels and things like that, through how old I was playing up and how many goals. So yeah, from being a kid to being 22, 23, then I probably had that mindset, let's say.
And in that era that you came through in, it's some of the best footballers we've ever seen. Did you realise that at the time? Like the likes of Gerrard, you'd Scholes, Rooney. Like, did you realise that around you even when you were coming through, say, the youth ranks in Liverpool?
Yeah, I mean, Steven Gerrard was in my year. We were at Liverpool since we were babies, really. So I knew he was a great player. I was in the team a lot earlier than Stevie. Probably my body was ready for it a little bit more. Mentally, I was there. Stevie came through later, but we always knew he was going to be exceptional. Of course, we had the generation of the Manchester United players, but the likes of Scholes and Becks and everyone else were all a fair few years older than me. So in my year, it was probably, I mean, the likes of Rio and Lampard are a year or two older than me. But in my year at that point, you know, Rooney was still 13 or something when I was breaking through. So, yeah, so I came through the ranks. I don't think there was any surprise that, you know, from within the football community that I was going to be breaking through at some point. And that point was as a 17-year-old in the Liverpool first team. And yeah, at that point, I was just, as I said earlier, mentally ready to go. And in my first season, won the Golden Boot in the Premier League. In the second season, won the Golden Boot. And, you know, there's a lot of things that everyone will do in their career, but I think, though that, winning 2 Golden Boots in your first 2 years as a baby, really, going into a team and with the great strikers around at the time, the Shearers, the Sheringham's, all those, you know, great players, Ian Wrights and Robbie Fowlers and all those players. I think that was sort of probably what, when I look back now, I think to myself, that probably won't get done again.
Yeah. What age were you when you realised, oh my God, that blistering pace that I had is gone?
Well, it wasn't like an overnight thing.
Right. Because I thought there was a serious injury.
No, you're dead right. There was. I won the Ballon d'Or at 21.
Yeah.
I think I was past. I think I was past my best then.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Not necessarily past my best. I think I was massively compromised then. I snapped my hamstring in 2 at 19. And if you do that nowadays, you have surgery and you're pretty much fixed. Because I did it again in the cup final for Manchester United. Later on in my career, snapped my other one. I snapped my left one and had surgery the next day, and everything was fine.
Right.
But when I did my right one, if you to put it plainly, you have 3 muscles in your hamstring, and when one ruptures, it recoils and it reattaches there and reattaches there. So I've got 2 hamstrings in my right leg and 3 in my left, and I have had that since I was 19. So I'm basically a third down of power from being 19. Now, you get away with it when you're young, when your muscles are still adaptable and strong and you know, but it does gradually slow you down. And then, of course, when you're thrusting forward as fast as you can and you're getting a different ratio of power going through each leg, all of a sudden you start getting little pulls and little in your groin and everything starts going. So that was the period I had. Everything was going from the age of 20 to 23. I was just having loads of little problems. And the only way your body can stop that is to slow down. So now, naturally, my body was just going slower from that age onwards. So that is probably the biggest regret in my career. It's one of the biggest elements of pride in that I was still playing at the top level when I was 32, because I really shouldn't have been. But also, even though I'm pretty proud of that, I'm regretful that, Jesus, if I hadn't have had that injury, where would that have taken me? So, or if it had been 5 years later when science would have made that they could repair it, as it is, I was just left with a hamstring to heal that was never going to heal.
So your whole game is pace, and you're out there on the pitch, and I suppose mentally you think, you know, I can do it, but physically your body's saying, no chance. Absolutely.
The mental, I was listening to the guys before and Karen talking about retiring. it was mental torture for me for a long part of my career. I absolutely love the game, but coming off and Paul Scholes having the ball, let's say, or Steven Gerrard having the ball, and knowing that that is my game, running in there and nobody's going to catch me, knowing that that is just my natural instinct that has been with me for 20 years, that's all I've ever done, and then coming off thinking, oh no, that's too big a space. If I sprint into there, that's a 40-metre sprint. I'm going to snap my hamstring if I do that. I've got to come short for... So I had to totally adapt my game to being just a link player, and then I had to turn my game into an absolute predator. So just be lethal in the box. So I was basically, for the second half of my career, just a goal scorer. Link play and get in the box. And it's fine, it's great, I'm sure, like you're still playing in the Premier League and everything, what you're complaining about, but when you had so much more, that the mental pain of not being able to just go with your instinct and just play football off the cuff, which is what it was all about, then that really hurt me mentally. And by the end, I just couldn't wait to get out. I was almost embarrassed that I wasn't the player that I was anymore, and I didn't want people seeing me not being, what I was.
I remember you were over in Dublin and I interviewed you. It was a long time ago, but you talked about your time at Stoke and being conscious of younger players looking at you and going, is that Michael Owen? That leads on from really that last answer. I was almost at the end thinking, don't bring me on. I'm just not as good as I was, and I don't want people seeing me being, And as I say, I could still, in those last few years, I was coming on for Manchester United, scoring a goal against City in the night. I scored a hat-trick in the... I could still do it. I could still score a goal. If you put me in front now, I can still score a goal. I've still got the instinct. I know where it's going to go better than anyone else. But I just can't get my body in that position. So. Well, you could see it with that Man United goal. I think we've a few United... I can't even work out what's going on with the booing and the cheering. You could see with that goal, the touch and a couple of Newcastle, the touch and the finish was perfect.
Yeah. I mean, instinctive-wise and finishing-wise, I could still do it. But as I say, that when you had something else, and that it was just hard to do mentally. To be a thinking footballer as opposed to an instinctive footballer. That's what I'm trying to say. And I ended up having to be a thinker, having to do things that I wasn't really built to do, holding the ball up and linking play. If you're going to get that, then put someone else, a Berbatov or a Heskey or something else. It wasn't my game. So that was tough for the second half of my career.
Was there ever a moment that you wanted to say, look, jack it all in, like early on, say in your early 20s, when you said you couldn't play like you wanted to?
No, I love the game so much that I was never, in my... Even when I did my hamstring, I still had great success afterwards because, as I say, I was still young and still had a lot of power in my muscles, and so it still carried me for a few years. I still could, went to Real Madrid and still felt that I was at the top of my game. When I came back to Newcastle, still felt great in that first season. But then once I did my knee, coming back from that, my knee was perfect, but then I just felt as if I started losing speed at a rate of knots then. So around 26, something like that, I felt as if I was starting to really lose speed, and that was sort of when it started becoming quite mentally challenging.
Did your motivation drop? I could see how it might be difficult to eat perfectly and train perfectly.
Yeah, it's absolutely that. When you don't feel good about yourself, when you don't feel like that you're going to be the top goal scorer, you're going to be the Golden Boot winner, you start slipping. Yeah. And again, listening to Righty before about Arsene Wenger, one or two people might have thought, I'm not doing this, but all of a sudden, if everyone starts doing it, you start feeling the guilty party. And that it was almost a roles reversed. When you're not feeling as if you're going to play every week, when you're not feeling as if you're sharp and going to score, and you're not chasing something that's big, then everything slips, your mental capacity, everything, your training, and you just start, lowering your levels, really.
Yeah. The move to Manchester United, you mentioned it there. I think you've explained perfectly your rationale, and it makes sense to most of us. What's been the legacy of that, though, with Liverpool fans at this stage? Do you get a warm reception at Anfield, or is it lukewarm as a result, or mixed?
Yeah, no, absolutely fine. I mean, I go to Anfield a lot. You know, I think everybody knows the story by now. I mean, I left Liverpool with a real heavy heart. Going to Real Madrid was something that I never planned on doing at all. But going to Real Madrid at the time, everybody was, you know, Real Madrid were the best team. Well, Real Madrid, Barcelona, the Spanish league at the time was great. The Galacticos, you're talking Rooney, you're talking Ronaldo, you're talking Figo, Beckham, Zidane, all the great players. So I just thought, I've got to try that. And I looked at Ian Rush, that a few years earlier he went to, or quite a few years earlier, he went to Juventus and then came back. And I just thought, I'll never get this opportunity again to go, and I can always come back, was sort of the overriding thought. So I thought, I'll go and try it for a year or two. And of course, did the year, had a great time, loved every minute of it, but really wanted to come back to Liverpool. Unfortunately, Liverpool wouldn't pay what Newcastle were paying or get close to paying that. So I had a massive decision whether to go to Newcastle or stay at Real Madrid. But I went to Newcastle on the proviso that I could put in the contract, and every year, at the end of every season, I could go back to Liverpool for a set fee. And of course, that looked as if it was going to come true after the first year, but then I did my knee in the World Cup, and then it never happened since. So at the end of every summer, on the phone to Brendan Rodgers, on the phone to all of them. And so was Jamie Carragher, and so was Steven Gerrard, trying to push things through and trying to get me back. But of course, times moves on, and Torres had signed, and Suarez signs, and so they never really needed me back at that point, which is fair enough. I mean, I made the decision to go to Madrid, so there's absolutely no hard feelings. And then when I finished at Newcastle, I'm obviously on a Bosman, again, same thing, on the phone to Jamie Carragher, go and have a word with Brendan Rodgers. But again, at the time, just didn't need a striker, or didn't need me at the time. So that's when you've just got to, you know, look after yourself, go to the best. The funny thing is the three teams that were in for me at the time were Hull City, who were in the relegation time area, were Everton, and were Man United. So I thought, no matter what happens here, I'm going to get slaughtered. But I think most sensible people, realise that. I would have done anything. I would have walked back to Liverpool, of course. But that was not to be, so absolutely no regrets.
Does it hurt not to have finished your career there?
At Liverpool?
Liverpool?
Yeah, in a way, but listen, when I speak to Cara, when I speak to Stevie, like real mates of mine at the time, they're like, when I was coming back to the England squads, or when they were on the they were like, what was it like? What's it like? How good was that playing for they were intrigued to play for me playing out there. So part of me thinks, yes, you know, I would have loved to have been a one-club man, but part of me thinks I had experiences. And the other thing that I sort of comforts me as well is that Liverpool, not only that, but Liverpool saw me at my absolute best. And I wasn't great at 27, 28. I wouldn't have probably got in. That Suarez and Torres were way better than me at that stage of my career. So would it have been sour? Would I have got, you know, kicked out anyway at 20, you know, sold on or whatever? So part of me thinks Liverpool saw me and had me at my absolute peak. So, you know, that's another thing that's sort of reasonably comforting.
And when Jamie Carragher and Steven Gerrard are phoning you up saying, what's it like at Real Madrid? What's it like at Real Madrid?
It was unbelievable. I mean, I had a great time. The standard of play, the players there, the stadium, the weather, the white kit, prancing out like 11 angels.
It was nice.
You know, it's just a magical, mythical team, the Galacticos at the time. I had some great times. I mean, scoring in El Clasico, I always remember I was sat in the players' lounge afterwards, and all my family had came over to watch the game, and we were in the players' lounge, and the TVs were rolling. We were having a drink afterwards, and my dad was sat right next to me, and the goals went in. I think Eto'o, Ronaldinho were the 2 scorers for Barcelona, and Zidane, Ronaldo, Raul, and Owen were the 4 scorers for. And we'd watched the goals going in, and then once the goals had finished, it just, a graphic came up: Real Madrid 4, Barcelona 2, and the goal scorers underneath. And it was only then I realised, Jesus, look at those 6 goal scorers. And I nudged my dad, and he looked at me and went, I think you made a good decision there. That was almost like, that was almost the moment.
And then that was like the peak Galactico period. Was this a dressing room that lacked discipline and like superstars doing their own thing, or was it fairly well run?
I think the players did pretty much run it to a certain extent. Certainly the manager wouldn't have been a real big disciplinarian. I think it was policed by the players, like most dressing rooms are, really. And these great players aren't great players because they toss it off all the time and they just do this and do that. I mean, you're talking Zidane, one of the greatest players of all time, Roberto Carlos, Brazilian Ronaldo. I mean, we're talking the greats here. They're not, and as much as everyone likes to think, oh yeah, they just must have done nothing, they're greats because they know what to do. It's fair to say that different cultures have different, ways of going. So Brazilians in a large part that I've met, the likes of Ronaldo, Roberto Carlos, they do like a party. And but you always get 1 or 2 players like that in the team. But in general, I don't think it was, I don't think it was a dressing room that was out of control and whatever. But certainly training sessions weren't military precision. You could come in 5 minutes late. You could try to nutmeg a few people in training. It was quite a loose and lax atmosphere compared to some. However, it was still done properly.
And when you walked in there for the first time, obviously you were a massive name, but were you starstruck at all, looking at the likes of Ronaldo and Figo?
I was, at that time of my career, I really wasn't. As I said, I know, the one thing I wanted to do, and bear in mind, as I say, I walked in there having been top scorer in the Premier League for a couple of seasons, having just won the Ballon d'Or. I went in there thinking I deserve to be in here. I'm as good as anyone in world football. That's just what my attitude was at the time. Because at that time, I believed I was. But I remember thinking, I just cannot wait for the first training session. Because of all these big names, forget the crowd, forget fans, forget the manager even, forget anything. If you can't gain the respect of your teammates, then you've got nothing. I wanted that first training session so bad. I wanted to be on the team with Zidane and Figo and everyone else, and actually them pass me the ball, and that they immediately have respect for me. Or when they're in position, in possession, the positions I take up, the main thing you've got to do is get their respect, because on match day, if they ain't going to give you the ball in tight situations, if they're not, confident in what you're going to do with the ball, then you've got nothing. So I just remember that first week thinking, I'm going to be on it now. I'm going to gain everybody's respect as a proper player. I'm going to show them that I'm a player. And I just remember that, because everything else will flow after that. If you're part of the team, if you've gained their respect, then they'll pass you the ball, they'll feed you in, they'll do everything. And then the fans will like you and the manager will like you, but you've got to get the respect of the players first.
In training and in matches, you must have seen Zidane do the most ridiculous things.
Zidane was the best player I've ever played with. He was absolutely born to be a footballer. It was almost, when you're a kid and you've got the football at the end of a string and it just keeps coming back to you. I mean, it was like he played with an invisible string. No matter what touch he took, it was always the same distance away from him. The way he moved, like if a ball comes into my chest and I want to go over there, or most people, you chest it, you wait for it to drop, and then you take another touch and then you're off. He just had this amazing, wherever the ball came, if it came up around his ear or anywhere, he could just take it into the direction that he wanted to in one touch, and it be in perfect control, just always 3-4 foot ahead of him. He was just incredible. Left foot, right foot, fast. He was so fast, so strong. He could do a Cruyff turn out of a little hole and burst away, and the strength of the guy as well. I was quite scared of him, to be honest, because when I first walked in, he's got these really deep eyes, and I walked, and it was a nightmare because in the changing ground, the door was here, and it was quite a long, thin dressing room, and I was like far left, down the bottom. And as soon as I walked in, sort of Zidane was on the left, but up here, and he used to just sit there. Everyone else was like playing keepy-ups and whatever, and he used to just sit there like this for about half an hour, just staring at everyone. And I thought when I first came in that he must hate me because he just stared at me the whole way. I was petrified of him for the first month or two until I realised he did it to everyone, but no, he was just incredible. What a player he was.
Did you think he was going to be the Champions League, multi-Champions League winning manager? Were there any signs of that?
Well, I didn't really see him going into management. I didn't, he was not very vocal at all on the training pitch. It probably didn't help because he didn't speak English either, but he certainly wasn't that vocal on the pitch, but he had a real air about him. I mean, of all the players there, and I'm talking, R9, Brazilian Ronaldo was, a legend. When I was growing up watching him, I thought, Jesus Christ, I think I'm one of the best about. If that's the level, I ain't got a chance of being a professional footballer, let alone. I mean, he was off the scale good. But even someone like him, it was Zidane that had this air, this presence about him, just the grace, how graceful he was moving with the ball. And it was he always commanded the most respect, I felt, in the dressing room. So from that point of view, I could have seen him being a leader, but he certainly wasn't very vocal out on the pitch.
Just a final one, I suppose. You were very experienced by the time you got to see Alex Ferguson doing his thing. What struck you about why was this guy so far ahead of the pack?
I was absolutely astounded. I think, was it 26 years he was manager of Manchester United? When you talk to the Giggsies and the Scholes and all the rest of them, they used to say that he'd be in at 6 o'clock, he'd be painting the white lines, he'd be putting the nets up, he'd be scouting all the players, he'd be running the academy, he'd be doing all the players' contracts, he'd be picking the team on a Saturday. He would literally run the club from top to bottom. Now, when I went to the club, of course, he'd been manager 23, 24 years. He was very much delegating. And, of course, Manchester United have gone from, what they were 25, 26 years ago to probably employing 30 people to employing 3,000 people. I mean, it's a totally different organisation. So I don't blame him having to delegate. But he certainly didn't have the energy, and he's got a horse at my stable, so we often talk about it when he comes down. He didn't have the energy back in, at the end of his career to be doing the academy, to be doing all the things he used to. So he just totally focused on that first team on a Saturday. He didn't coach during the week. He stood there and watched training, but on a Saturday he came into his own. And when you see the teams that he won the league with at the end of his career, and then you see the fall off as soon as he left, I mean, it says it all. He's just staggering how he gets every little last bit out of all his players. And it was just an amazing thing for me to hear about what he did at the start and then witness that change. He still had the respect of everybody, still knew everybody's name at the training ground, but he just had total control, total trust in everybody. So if you're a doctor or you're a physio, then you run the medical department. I'm going to trust you and leave you to it. If you're the first team coach, you're going to coach the first team. It does what it says on the tin. That's the clues in the name. If you're in the canteen, then you're going to cut the foot. So he just trusts everybody, and he was brilliant at delegating at the end. And I see that as a real good trait, considering he did everything right at the outset.
Where would he rate in the managers that you've had?
Well, I mean, his record suggests he's the best. I think... I mean, he has to be the best, doesn't he? It's not even a
even in
close
terms
one, really.
of man management. And
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I mean, I had some really influential people that manage me over the years. I mean, Glenn Hoddle at England was probably, in terms of tactics and know-how, he was probably the most intelligent or understanding of the game. But I think Gerard Houllier at the time, I was listening to intently to Righty, because when Arsene Wenger came in, it was the same time as, basically, that was the reason that Gerard Houllier came in. We were watching this team from down in London, and they were running faster than us, further than us, never getting injured. And we were thinking, what's happening down there? Are they all on drugs or something? They're just flying. And Gerard Houllier came in and changed everything. And I think he brought Liverpool into the new century.
A round of applause, please. That was fascinating. Michael Owen, everybody.